8 o'clock here in New York City, 8 p.m. in Singapore. And we start with the Fox News alert. The countdown to that historic summit there is on.
We've just learned exclusively brand new information about what will happen at the meeting between President Trump and Kim Jong-un.
We waited years for this, and now we're 13 hours away. Rich Edson joins us live from Singapore with the latest. Rich, what can you tell us?
Good morning. And Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, the highest-ranking American to have met with Kim Jong-un, at least for now, says that he hopes tomorrow and expects the summit will begin a long, productive conversation with North Korea. The Secretary of State says that he expects that and hopes that North Korea will surrender its nuclear weapons program, and in exchange, he says, the United States is prepared to ensure the Kim regime's security.
That we are prepared to make security assurances necessary for the North Koreans to engage in that denuclearization. That is, we're prepared to take actions that will provide them sufficient certainty that they can be comfortable that denuclearization isn't something that ends badly for them.
The Secretary refused to detail what exactly the U.S. is offering, though last week, Secretary of Defense James Mattis said U.S. military personnel levels in South Korea were not part of these discussions. Two sources familiar with summit planning say the meetings tomorrow will begin with the president and Kim Jong-un alone, meeting with translators. Then they'll bring in advisors. For the U.S., Secretary Pompeo, White House Chief of Staff John Kelly, National Security Advisor John Bolton, others, including by one source telling us that Sarah Huckabee Sanders will also be involved in that later round. The Secretary says U.S. and North Korean negotiating teams have already met this morning, again later this afternoon. He also says President Trump spoke with South Korea's president and Japan's prime minister. After the summit this week, the Secretary of State will go to Seoul and brief the South Korean government personally, and then on to Beijing to speak with Chinese leadership. Back to you.
Rich Edson live in Singapore, where it is 8:02 p.m. We thank you very much. All right, so this is without a doubt the biggest week in President Trump's presidency. It's interesting. From people who have been inside on the conversations with the president, he feels that if he can just get in the room with that guy, he will figure out what he wants and figure a way to get what the United States wants, which Mike Pompeo stated very effectively just about 2 hours ago, live from Singapore, complete denuking of the peninsula. Of course, it's not going to be a one-stop thing. It's going to be in phases, but nonetheless, they've got to start the process.
President's smart to manage those expectations, to say it might take a long time, we might have more of these summits. But if you look at what we've already gained, let's say worst case scenario, this meeting is canceled at the 11th hour. Look at what we've gained, though, because of this. North Korea is talking about denuking, sitting down and meeting with our president, which has never been done before. The president of North Korea, Kim, traveled farther than he ever has. He traveled 3,000 miles for this meeting since he's become president. Right. He purged 3 of his dad's old guard headliners. He dismantled the nuclear testing site, crossed the DMZ. 3 American hostages are home. Stopped firing missiles over Japan. Stopped threatening Guam. Stopped threatening America. All of this without bribes. Our president didn't have to give up anything.
Well, the one thing he gets is a face-to-face with our president, which will be played for decades because him and his father and grandfather never got that. But we never gotten this far. One thing that Jim Vandehei writes in today's Axios is that even Democrats who begrudgingly say that the president's unorthodox style is the thing that brought this to the place it is, and maybe going through the traditional ways wouldn't have worked out. Amongst the people who are going to be in the room, we know the president's got a 1 to 2 hour one-on-one with just interpreters, but then there's going to be John Kelly is going to be there, Mike Pompeo will be there, and John Bolton. Very interesting. John Bolton wasn't here when the North Korean delegation came in. He wasn't at the Oval Office then because he tends to be a hardliner, and he's gotten under their skin in the past, but he is very much front and center now.
And we understand there could actually be one other member of the president's cabinet in the room. We don't know what that name might be, but Brian, you make a great point. In that room with just translators will be 2 of the most unpredictable world leaders in world history. And you got to keep in mind, Donald Trump is 71 years old. His birthday is going to be on Thursday. He'll be 72. Kim Jong-un is 34. Kim Jong-un, as we saw in that Mike Pompeo interview with Chris Wallace a while back, loves American culture. So just imagine, here you've got Kim Jong-un, this 30-year-old kid, young leader, man, seated across the table from an American icon. You know, somebody in culture, you know, that's the TV star. He's a billionaire and he's the president. You got to wonder whether or not there's going to be any intimidation. If so, that works to the president's favor. Nonetheless, Sebastian Gorka says the president's got a great team on board right now.
The world, or at least America's interlocutors, are understanding the speed of Trump. Things are going so quickly and so smoothly because of the team we have. And at the end of the day, everybody understands the stakes. We have the potential now, Steve, to go from fire and fury with regard to this issue to potentially peace and prosperity. So, you know, from fire and fury to peace and prosperity couldn't be bigger stakes than that.
Steve, you mentioned icons. The president says, I'm going to go in there and tell him you can become wealthy, wealthier than you've ever been. Your country can become wealthier because we know people there are starving. If you have this meeting with us, if you negotiate with us, because we would like to send our iconic American businesses into North Korea. And he gave the example of McDonald's. And I also heard analysts say they're going to be watching carefully to see how the president, what his facial expressions are when he shakes hands with Kim Jong-un. Many people last night on Fox News were saying, I hope he doesn't smile because they will use that as propaganda in North Korea.
Well, I hope so, too. And when I was very heartened by it, before the president left, when he had that very revealing press conference, he said, he always brings up Otto Warmbier and their families. It was also brought up, too, that he met with 8 North Korean defectors in the Oval Office back in February. So if you keep that image in your mind, you know your objective, but you also should know what he's capable of and what he's doing. It's estimated that he's got 200,000 people in what they call gulags, the worst possible existence you can imagine. How many people he's murdered that he's not even related to, let alone ones he's not. And he also knows this. When East Germany and West Germany, when the wall began to fall, there was never a plan for East Germany and West Germany to unite. But once there was a crack in the wall came down, and the country just united organically. He's probably studied that. He went to school in Switzerland. Right. He could see if there's too much relaxation, there might be a chance to glimmer hope and prosperity.
And Brian, when you bring up the Warmbier family, I talked to them on the phone, and they said, you know, it is hard to see. It's wonderful that these 3 Americans came home, and they came home safely. We do have questions as to why North Korea did that, what they did to our son. Why didn't they bring him home safely? Why didn't they send him home safely? So I hope the president does ask him about that, because we all want to know.
Well, and apparently the president feels that he will know within 1 minute of sitting down across the table from Kim Jong-un if it's going to be a good meeting or not. Also, remember back in 1971, the United States and China did this thing called ping pong diplomacy, where we exchanged ping pong demonstrations, and that opened up the talks between the Russians and, of course, President Reagan at the time. Or rather, not
China.
Reagan, China, exactly. And so there's some feeling that they have been examining that, and they could actually have some sort of an exchange where, whether it's the Korean gymnasts or else the National Symphony, nonetheless, it looks as if things are moving. And we did hear from Mike Pompeo about 3 hours ago. It sounds like they will sign something tomorrow. We just don't know what it is. Is it the end of the war? We don't know.
I was going to say that. We could possibly see the end of the Korean War, which would be incredible. And listen, you remember how all this started. The president was meeting with the leader of China. They were sitting down together. That was supposed to be a 30-minute meeting. It lasted 4 hours. They had this they walked away having a civil, wonderful relationship. Then the president of China goes back to North Korea and says, hey, I sat down with President Trump. You should do the same thing. And in fact, he had an opportunity to buy coal from North Korea. He canceled that shipment and then bought the coal from the United States to prove a point.
Democrats helped out a lot. They thought they were like kind of whipping the president by saying these are all the criteria that has to be in any agreement. Pretty much the feeling with the administration is we agree with everything here. Too bad you didn't give it to John Kerry before he cut up the Iran deal. And on top of that, Lindsey Graham says, I love it too. Let's just add in this. If the military threat is real, one way or another, this is going to get resolved during the president's first term. You make the choice. So I would love for Congress to get an AUMF and put that forward. That would help the president. He could just go, yeah, by the way, we're united at home on this. There's the paperwork from the other party.
Are the lights dimming? Is that?
It looked like it, yes.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
We're looking to save a little money in the last
It's
hour.
very dramatic. So
We
anyway,
wanted to act like it was Singapore.
by this time
starting to get dark there.
we could have a deal to open a McDonald's, but then again, I heard in the last segment we might actually have a deal to open an IHOB.
Right.
They're open to it.
They are.
Right.
All right.
So, Julian, why were you dimming the lights while we were talking?
Well, I had to get
Normally
you
I
to
don't-
rap somehow.
I know, no kidding.
Make it more romantic.
Last call. That's what you were saying.
Last call. Yes, that is right. We do have some serious news, though, guys. I know that you brought this to our attention in the last half an hour, so let's get you caught up. A Fox News alert. A police officer is shot responding to a domestic call overnight. Now the suspected gunman is barricaded inside an Orlando apartment complex, holding 4 young kids hostage. Police say the officer was shot trying to arrest the suspect. He was seriously hurt and needed surgery, but is expected to survive. Right now, SWAT teams are trying to negotiate the suspect's surrender. We'll have a live report from the scene in just a few minutes. Also breaking right now, an American pilot is in serious condition after ejecting to safety moments before a jet crash. The F-15 plunging into the sea during a training mission off the coast of Okinawa, Japan. The pilot, the only person on the plane, was rescued. The incident is under investigation. This marks the 6th non-combat crash for the Air Force already this year. That's compared to 7 in total last year. The Justice Department has until tomorrow to turn over documents related to the Russia probe. House Intelligence Committee Chair Devin Nunes sending a letter to Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein demanding the records regarding an alleged FBI informant. Constitutional law professor at George Washington University, Jonathan Turley, says Nunes has every right to make this demand.
Nunes is the first chairman who's been this aggressive, and frankly, for those of us who believe we need greater oversight, that's a good change.
The DOJ has not commented. The First Lady stepping into the spotlight to pay tribute to Abraham Lincoln's legacy. Melania Trump serving as the honorary chair of the Ford's Theater Gala in Washington, D.C. She made remarks and congratulated the recipients of the Lincoln Medal. In a statement, the First Lady says it, quote, reminds all of us about the power the arts have in cultivating the American voice. Well, let's look at your headlines. I'll send it back to you.
I've been to that event at Ford Theater. It's
Really?
great. Yeah.
Nice.
Back in the day. All right. Thank you, Jillian. All right. Still ahead on this Monday, this American missionary was jailed for almost 2 years by North Korea. But this morning, he's hopeful for the president's summit with Kim Jong-un. He will join us live next.
And the media wasting no time slamming President Trump after he arrived in Singapore.
President set the bar lower to start.
Everybody's skepticism is warranted.
There's too much here on the table to actually do anything that is going to be, look, I beat my predecessors.
Tammy Bruce is here to react to that.
What a turn of events, seeking peace with enemies, picking fights with friends.
Whatever they have, whatever low bar they have, then you'll have the work proceed after that.
The president set the bar lower to start.
Everybody's skepticism is warranted.
There's too much here on the table to actually do anything that is going to be, look, I beat my predecessors.
This right now, as it stands, is a huge win for Kim. Pictures coming out of Singapore will likely be our president smiling and shaking hands with this murderous thug.
Well, President Trump arriving in Singapore and the media, as you heard, wasting no time slamming him and the summit. So why is the media practically rooting for our president to fail at this historic summit? Let's ask radio talk show host and Fox News contributor Tammy Bruce. Tammy, thank you for joining us.
Sure.
They really are just rooting on him to fail. But Bill Maher said, I hope we have a recession so that he doesn't get reelected.
Yeah, this shows you that this conversation is not at all about policy or that they have a better idea and they want their ideas to succeed. It now is completely devoid of being based in reality. They simply want him to be hurt. They want the nation now to be hurt because it is now pathological. It's a personal loathing that is nothing. They might explain it to themselves as that he's bad for the country. But of course, now that's been proven to be incorrect, hasn't it? And so now that gets added in to their anger, that he's actually been successful. Now, we've seen this nation come together in the past, whether it be September 11th, other dynamics where Americans come together. That's who we are. We come together. We're a team. The fact that even on a day like today, we've seen the success of the president economically, but with the Singapore summit, that so many lives are at stake. The nature of how the world operates can change. Now, look, you can be a little skeptical, of course, because of the history, and you can have those conversations. But what you heard and what you hear, especially in this news coverage, is a kind of cheering wanting for their audiences to believe and to be as cynical as they are when it comes to the intentions of the president. It's clear that the president is blunt. He's transparent about his intentions, and it's a shame that they can't enjoy this possibility as the rest of America is.
You mentioned the word cheering, and that reminds me of what happened last night. I was watching the Tony Awards. Robert De Niro comes out to the podium, and he uses vulgarity. They had to bleep it. You couldn't even understand what he said. Watch this.
I'm going to say one thing. Trump. It's no longer down with Trump. It's Trump.
That was his soundbite at the end of his little entry or his little speech. But when he came out and he went to the podium, it was a bleep. And people in the audience were tweeting out what he wrote. He wrote, hey, or what he said, "Hey, Trump, I'm talking to you. It's no longer down with Trump. It's blank Trump." And then the audience goes crazy.
The audience goes crazy. This is why we have President Trump, because Americans are tired of being driven by that kind of hateful framework. He admits, he says it's no longer down with him, whatever that would mean. Now it's just this invective. And that has failed. We've rejected it in 2016. It's a shame. Americans love Hollywood and entertainment, the nature of what it can be. We saw that in World War II when everyone comes together. This is a different dynamic. And clearly it's not going to prevail. They have not persuaded Americans in the last year and a half or even through the campaign. We've seen people in this sense for what they are. The American people are partisans for the United States of America. This is something very different. But it's one person having that attitude is one thing. For that crowd to cheer.
I know.
In this city, New York, is a remarkable city. It deserves to survive. Broadway and theater deserves to survive. These are businesses, and it's a shame that they're going in that direction and that they haven't seen what's been good for America.
I know people in Hollywood. I know people here that are Broadway actors, and they can't say amongst their friends if they support him because the majority of the New York and Hollywood crowd don't want to support him. But there's a whole country in between.
Yes, it's up to us now. We've got this, and so does the president.
Thanks, Tammy.
Thank you.
Coming up, this American missionary was jailed for 2 years in North Korea, but this morning he's hopeful for the President's Summit with Kim Jong-un, and he's going to join us live next. We are back with a Fox News alert. A police officer is shot responding to a domestic call overnight.
Wow. Now the suspected gunman is barricaded inside an Orlando apartment complex holding 4 young kids hostage.
Dana J. from our Fox affiliate in Orlando is live at the scene. Dana, what's the latest?
Well, good morning, guys. That hostage situation still ongoing at this hour. It started around 12:30. They have us really far from the scene, but I'm going to have my photographer push in so that you can see the perimeter that police have created around this apartment complex here in Orlando. That suspect still barricaded at this point with his 4 hostages. The ages of these children who are being held hostage are 1, 7, 10, and 12 years old. Now, at this point, officers say they are trying to get that suspect to come out without hurting any other officers or, of course, hurting those children. This all started around 11:45 last night when a woman told officers that her husband had beat her up. She went off-site to meet with them, and when they headed back onto the scene to try and arrest that suspect, that is when the shots were exchanged with the suspect. So the Orlando police officer was taken to a local hospital. We understand he's undergone surgery. He's out at this point, but his injuries are very serious, so we're keeping an eye on that situation, and of course keeping an eye on this very volatile situation here where 4 children are being held hostage. Back to you.
Wow. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And also, if you want continuing coverage, one of our radio affiliates, WDBO, is covering that. Meanwhile, Steve.
On the heels of this historic summit, Kenneth Bae, an American missionary imprisoned in North Korea from 2012 to 2014, is now opening up about his time behind bars in North Korea, revealing he has hope for President Trump's meeting with Kim Jong-un. And Kenneth Bae joins us right now from Seoul, South Korea. Kenneth, good morning to you.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing okay. You know, you were in prison. They sent you away for 15 years. You were supposed to do hard labor for trying to overthrow the government. What were you doing in North Korea?
Well, I brought people to North Korea as a tourist, The people I brought in, they are Christian tourists. We just went in to see the land and love the people and just pray and worship in behalf of North Korean people. And it actually brought them in attention, and I was actually arrested because I brought people to pray and worship inside North Korea.
Absolutely. You're a missionary. That's your job. You were there to teach people about God, and they wound up saying you were doing hostile things against the government. They did sentence you to 15 years of hard labor. But what happened after 2 years? How were you sprung?
Well, in 2 years, I was in prison for 735 days. During the time that I was put in the prison to see not only for suffering for myself, but I saw the suffering of the people in North Koreans, people daily lives. So actually, after I came back, I have more heart for the people living in North Korea, and I came back more strong by trusting the Lord and just doing what God wanted me to do. So now I'm working in South Korea, working North Korean refugees, helping with them with the rescue operations to restoration work here in South Korea.
That's right. So because you did get to know during your 700 plus days there in prison in North Korea, you got to know some of the people of North Korea. Do you think they want some sort of a deal to denuke their program over there so they become part of the world community rather than just be so isolated from everybody else?
What they have told me is that they will never give up the nuclear program because they will guarantee their safety and their survival. And therefore, this is what they told me. They said is any country have give up the nuclear program, they all got invaded. But the countries that they will have nuclear programs, there never having any war between nuclear states, and therefore they need to hold on to the nuclear programs. At that time, when I was in prison there was no possibility of giving up the nuclear program that currently North Korea has right now.
Right, exactly. Although we heard from Mike Pompeo about 3 hours ago, he said there would be security guarantees for North Korea if they do give up the nukes. Kenneth, what does the President of the United States need to know about North Korea before he sits down with Kim Jong-un?
I would love to see the President Trump to talk about the human rights issues and is happening in North Korea as a part of the summit, because I was released and rescued by the American government here, but for the people living in North Korea, 25 million people living in North Korea, and their human rights is violated every day, especially with their religious freedom that they do not have right now. So I'd love to see that out of the outcome that President Trump will be able to speak about the human rights issues, including religious freedom. So therefore, the part of this negotiation program, that they will be able to secure some sort of deal improving the human rights issues of the North Korean people that are going through at this time.
Of course, that's very personal to you because you were sentenced to 15 years hard labor by North Korea. Kenneth Bae, an American preacher. We thank you very much for joining us today from Seoul, South Korea. Good luck with your missionary work over there, sir.
Well, thank you very much.
You bet. All right. It is now 8:30 here in New York City. One of President Trump's biggest bargaining chips with Kim Jong-un is the economy. We're live in Singapore to explain, coming up next. Plus, Justify races into the history books at Belmont.
He's just perfect, and now he's just immortal. Justify is the 13th Triple Crown winner.
The proud co-owner of Justify is going to join us live back half of this hour. You're watching Fox and Friends.
If you can use some exotic booze, there's a bar in far Bombay. Come fly with me, let's fly away. Come.
We are just hours away from the high-stakes summit between President Trump and Kim Jong-un. So how in the world did we get here?
Yep. Here's a look back at the key moments leading up to tonight's big meeting.
One of the papers called the other day, and they said, would you speak to the leader of North Korea? I said, absolutely. Why not?
North Korea launched its first ballistic missile since President Trump took office.
After 17 months, U.S. citizen Otto Warmbier was finally released from North Korea.
Otto Warmbier has just passed away. A year of strategic patience with the North Korean regime has failed. North Korea best not make any more threats to the United States. They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen.
North Korea firing another missile over the country of Japan,
proving Guam is within striking distance.
Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself.
It makes sense for North Korea to come to the table and to make a deal.
Today, the United States is designating North Korea as a state sponsor of terrorism.
Yesterday, North Korea talked to South Korea and said, hey, you know what? We'd like to talk to you about coming to the Winter Olympics.
I just spoke to President Moon. He's very thankful for what we've done. They're having talks.
Kim Jong-un said he is committed to denuclearization. He expressed his eagerness to meet President Trump.
Secretary of State right now, Mike Pompeo, is in North Korea.
3 Americans detained in North Korea will be coming home.
June 12th, are you going to be in Singapore?
We'll see what happens.
Yesterday, the president called Kim's bluff.
I've decided to terminate the planned summit.
Kim Jong-un and South Korea's president meeting overnight. President Trump teases that his face-to-face meeting could still happen.
In just a few minutes, I'll be leaving for Singapore. It's a great opportunity for peace.
Kim Jong-un got in here a little earlier today. One of the first things that he did was he directly went to meet with the Singaporean Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong.
There is the President of the United States stepping foot in Singapore as we await this historic summit. What we are seeing right now, this is history.
Remember, at the very beginning, no one thought this was even possible.
And the summit starts 12 hours and 23 minutes from right now. We just got some more details. In addition to that one-on-one meeting with just the translators, apparently then they're going to expand to an expanded bilateral meeting with a number of the president's advisors in the room. And then they will have a working lunch, at which time Sarah Sanders will also be in the room along with a couple of other experts. So
John Kelly and John Bolton.
Better idea of what's going on in Singapore.
A strong U.S. economy is crucial bargaining chip for the president in his meeting with Kim Jong-un, they say.
Fox Business Network's Deirdre Bolton joins us live in Singapore with more. Good morning. From a business perspective, how can our economy be a bargaining chip for the president going into this meeting?
Well, as you know, the U.S. economy and China's economy are the largest two in the world. So the sanctions that we have been imposing with China following our lead on North Korea have really put North Koreans in a tough spot. Earlier on, I spoke with a former ambassador to Singapore, somebody who served under President George W. Bush, Frank Lavin. Here's how he sees North Korea's current position.
He's had a change of mind. He's not come because he's had a change of heart and he now thinks nuclear weapons are dangerous and democracy is a good idea. He is coming because he's pushed into a corner, right? Economically, and I think also by the Chinese politically. He's pushed into a corner. So he's got to do something to try to unwind the difficult spot he's in.
And of course, the ambassador told me as well that Kim Jong-un does not fly under normal circumstances. He is a dictator who is concerned, of course, about potential assassination attempts or potential coups. So he does not leave North Korea too willingly. The fact that he has, it shows there is a lot on the table. Earlier, we heard from Secretary of State Mike Pompeo saying that as long as North Korea does not agree to complete and verifiable denuclearization, that the sanctions will stay very much on. So Kim Jong-un has made essentially 2 promises to his people. One is military strength, which unfortunately he has accomplished in the past few years, but the other really is economic. Some of the Korea's experts that I've been meeting with here, they say you know what, some materials from South Korea have actually made their way up north, even something as trivial as South Korean soap operas. So the point is that there is a class of people in Pyongyang who are aware that the world is larger and may want something more. And it seems as if Kim Jong-un has already spoken very publicly on that point and needs to deliver on that process. So as long as Kim Jong-un is concerned about the economy of North Korea, the U.S. really has a lot of muscle and a lot of potential sway to change world history. Back to you in New York.
All right, Deirdre, thanks so much. It's going to be interesting. They're also bringing into that meeting, we understand now, that Matthew Pottinger from the NSC, John Bolton will be there. John Bolton is not really liked by North Korea because he's such a hardliner and he's very pro-American. And White House Chief of Staff John Kelly. So you got the Marine General, you got the President, you got a good mix of experience, and at any moment, Mike Pompeo will come marching in. I also think it's important. They're getting a lot of American culture. I just hope we stop it at the housewives, because the housewives of North Korea, that is something that hit our society we cannot shake now, and I want it to stop.
So you wouldn't watch it? That's just,
I would not watch it.
You're just weighing in.
They just, we'll start with soap operas and end there. If possible.
Thanks, Brian. Let's hand it over to Jillian to find out what's happening, what else is happening in the news. Hey, Jillian.
That's right. Good morning to you at home as well. We have a manhunt that's intensifying for an attempted murder suspect who was released from jail by mistake. Court documents show Duin Perez Cordova used another inmate's identity to leave the detention center in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Police now warning the public not to approach him, calling him violent and dangerous. The jail is investigating and trying to figure out exactly what went wrong. Hot, dry, and windy conditions helping a massive wildfire explode in size. Thousands of people told to evacuate their homes in Colorado, but so far, no houses have been destroyed. The blaze ripping through more than 16,000 acres so far. That's bigger than Manhattan, and it's only 10% contained. Crews desperately working to put the fire out. It's still unclear what sparked it. Actor Vince Vaughn flashes a smile after he's busted for suspected drunk driving. The Wedding Crasher star arrested at a checkpoint in Southern California. He and a passenger in his car also charged with resisting, delaying, or obstructing officers. Police say the arrest was caught on body camera footage, but so far no word on whether or not that will be released. IHOP is flipping its P to a B, and now we finally know why. IHOB stands for International House of Burgers, the company making the announcement exclusively on Fox and Friends.
We're always going to be IHOP, but America loves burgers and America loves IHOP, and we thought this was a fantastic combination.
IHOB will still sell breakfast all day long. That's a look at your headlines.
And they're still going to have the pancakes.
Right.
But now they've got burgers.
And it looks like it's going to be temporary, too, right? Just for about a month?
Just for, yeah.
And they're going to go back to normal.
Change all the signs.
Unbelievable.
I think they just want you to know you can have a burger there in addition to your pancakes.
And Janice, you were on the couch for that big announcement. Can you describe the feeling?
Full, because I ate the whole burger. I was the only one that ate the burger from the IHOB. What do you guys think of the IHOB? Oh, no. I will tell you the burger is awesome. Where are y'all from? Oh, excellent representation, everybody. And we've got anniversaries here, right? 50th anniversary, raise your hand. Excellent. All right, let's take a look at the maps. It is a beautiful day for enjoying New York City. A little cooler than average. What is the temperature there? 62 in New York City, 61 in Chicago, 76 in Memphis right now. And there's the past 24 hours. So we have a front that's kind of hanging around the Ohio Valley, the Mid-Mississippi Valley, and parts of the Mid-Atlantic. That could bring a little bit of rain in the forecast. What is your favorite channel? Oh my gosh, on a Monday, look at all my friends. Aren't they all beautiful? Wave to everybody at home, beautiful people.
And you know the
Tell
rule.
them
Anyone who
thank
comes
you.
gets free breakfast with Janice on Janice.
Yes,
she pays.
of course.
All right.
Tell them thank you. They keep us employed.
Right.
We love our viewers.
Thanks for watching.
Meanwhile, I also love the news. So let me tell you what's coming up next. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo drawing a hard line for North Korea. Denuclearization is the only option. I put that in bold. Former CIA Station Chief Daniel Hoffman here next. There he is. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo making America's message to North Korea pretty clear about an hour ago. But even if it means economic reform and food for a starving country, will Kim Jong-un really give up the nuclear weapons, the entire program, enriching uranium, plutonium? Live from Singapore right now is Fox News contributor, former CIA Station Chief Daniel Hoffman. Daniel, right now, on the ground, people are wondering what the Kim Jong-un is willing to do. What I'm wondering, and what you might know, is what he has. How do we know what he has to know what he's willing to give up?
Well, that's really the key tactical question for the CIA to answer is how many nuclear sites are there? Where are they located? Need to know about the scientists who are engaged in those nuclear facilities. Remember the end of the Cold War, and a lot of Russian scientists left the Soviet Union and caused a lot of problems in other countries, including in North Korea. So there's a lot of intelligence out there. There may be some gaps that we need to fill, but we work really closely with our allies in the region, particularly South Korea and with Japan. That's why it's so important that, along with Secretary Pompeo, we have Andrew Kim, who is the CIA Korea mission manager. He's a native Korean speaker, served in the region, and has exceptional relationships and background in this area.
Interesting. You think it's going to be really important for the president to know going into that 1 to 2 hour one-on-one meeting with just translators who this guy is? What do you think that he knows after Mike Pompeo can give you an up-close and personal look after their 2 meetings?
Right. One of the really important benefits of Secretary Pompeo's 2 visits to Pyongyang, along with Andrew Kim, were that he got to have face-to-face meetings with Kim Jong-un, who's obviously a very reclusive leader. We didn't have a whole lot of intelligence on what makes him tick. And one of the responsibilities for the CIA is to write leadership analysis profiles of our adversaries. And in this case, I think Secretary Pompeo and Andrew Kim will be able to give the president the information the president needs to step out smartly and establish that personal relationship that I think is so important for going forward in these negotiations.
All right, I'm going to look forward to get your observations throughout the next few days in the summit. You won 21 hours. We're going to get the most out of you. Is that all right, Dan?
Sounds good. Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
All right. Meanwhile, coming up straight ahead, history made at the Belmont. The proud co-owner of Justify joins us live, and he will react to the controversy about another horse helping his horse win. But first, let's check in with Sandra and Bill for what's coming up at the top of their 3-hour show.
Guess who was there?
Who?
13 Triple Crowns in history. I've seen 2 of them. I had to work for it. I mean, you got to really, really work for it, but mission accomplished. Brian, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm looking forward to your 3-hour show.
Thank you very much. Brand new week, and what a day to start a new program and introduce you to a brand new studio. How do you like the new home? We're getting settled this morning. We hope you join us. Busy news week.
Indeed it is. We got the Trump-Kim summit. Of course, you know, the coverage continues on that from overseas, and we got Chris Wallace and others coming up on that live.
All that happening in still these trade issues with Canada. The president, even as late as last night, has been tweeting on these issues, and tensions seem to be escalating, so we'll be all over that.
And in our new format, you're going to see a headliner every day. Today, from the White House, Kellyanne Conway is the headliner, and you're going to see America's A-Team, a panel of the best analysis you will see on cable television or anywhere for that matter, and you'll see that every day starting today as well.
Can't wait for all of that.
9 to noon, I do believe, is the hashtag.
9 to noon. You have officially hashtagged that. Come join us the next 3 hours. America's Newsroom. It all starts in about 10 minutes.
He's just perfect, and now he's just immortal. Justify is the 13th Triple Crown winner.
Bringing us back. Justify raced into the history books Saturday at the 150th running of the Belmont Stakes. The undefeated 3-year-old horse sweeping the Kentucky Derby, the Preakness Stakes, and now the Belmont. Here with more on the incredible win is part owner of Justify. I feel like we're family, Saul Cumin. Just saying. Are we family?
I feel like we're family. I feel like we've spent some quality time together here on this last 7 weeks. So it's great to be with you.
You're in Boston because you're there to help your sons win the lacrosse games, right?
That was yesterday. Today I'm here to work. But we had a nice day on the lacrosse field yesterday.
So how did it feel? What was the experience like when you won the Triple Crown?
It was incredible. I mean, you know, it was actually more emotional than I thought it was going to be. You know, we had a big crew of friends and family, and I was sitting in the box with my parents in front of me, my daughter on my lap, my boys to my right, my wife right behind me, my in-laws behind her. I mean, it was unbelievable. You know, it'll never happen again in my lifetime, at least for me. And I really just wanted to enjoy it. And it was just one of the great moments of my life. And I feel super, super blessed.
So listen, Saul, we have to address a little bit of controversy that's making the newspapers, especially the horse racing newspapers. So Bob Baffert trained Justify. He also trained another horse, Restoring Hope, that was also in the race yesterday. And some of the publications, one of the owners of the other horses is saying that horse, Restoring Hope, was, blocking so that Justify could, win the race. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I read it this morning, actually. I don't know. It's difficult, right? That same owner had two horses in the race, one that he wanted to go to the lead, one that was supposed to come off the pace. I think it's horse racing. I don't think there was anything done there that shouldn't have been done. When you look at the race, the horse that ran second, Gronkowski, ran an unbelievable race, missed a break and came from dead last, and none of what is being spoken about really had anything to do with that horse's trip. So for me, I understand it, but I don't think it will materialize into anything and take anything away from just the spectacular horse that Justify is.
So Saul, what's next for Justify?
Well, we'll have to wait and see and regroup. Our plan is to run him, through the end of the year, and we'll have to see how he comes out of this race, and then it'll be really up to Bob Baffert and WinStar Farm to decide what they want to do. I mean, there are really 4 races he could run in, with the Breeders' Cup at the end of the year being the big one.
So we got to let you go. Thank you.
We love you, Saul.
Congratulations.
We love Justify. Congratulations.
More Fox and Friends coming up.